The coolest thing that you can do with your elder is to grow plants from the cuttings, get cuttings to root. And next to just picking the berries, it's the second easiest thing you can do with elder. It's really fun and it's incredible how well it works. Hi there, this is Jordy from Northern Homesteading, helping you to be successfully self-sufficient. I just pruned my elder bushes and now I've got a pile of sticks and twigs here. And I'm going to trim these up and cut them down for cuttings and get them to root. I tried this last year for the first time and I had about a 95% excuse me, about a 95% success rate. This year I've got a few tips that are supposed to help that out, and I'm really thinking that I'm going to have just about a 99 to 100% success rate. And I'm pretty excited. I'm going to show you guys everything that I've learned about this. So I've got all my cuttings here. One of the important parts is when I'm taking the cuttings off the plant, at first I don't want to cut them up into smaller pieces. I can root these into pieces even just 6 inches tall. I can do that. But if I cut these all up into small pieces first, I'll get confused. I need to know which end is down and which end is up as they grow on the plant, because that makes a difference. I've got to have the bottom end down when I put it in my rooting solution. So for starters, all I do is just make one cut, just like that. I just make one slice with my machete or pruning shears, usually just on an angle because I'm cutting with a machete and that's easier. And I just bring all my pieces inside. To remember which side is up and down as I'm cutting them into pieces, because I will cut them a little shorter, I'm going to make a diagonal cut on one side, so I know that that's the bottom. For the top, I would make just a flat cut. So like with this one, I can go up here, I'm going to make a flat cut. That's what my cutting board's for. So that is one rooting piece. It's only about 7 inches long, but the important part is I know which side is down because I've got a diagonal slice on the down side, and that there's a node towards the bottom. I need at least one node, which is the little buds and the little bump where the buds are on the stem. I need at least one of those nodes underwater in my rooting solution. It's one node with 2 buds on it. I need that to be pretty much towards the bottom, but I'll leave maybe a ½ inch of wood past that node on the bottom. You don't want it right on the bottom, but it can be pretty close. So this one's good to go. This is the piece I just cut off the top of it. Now I'm going to go to the bottom of this and I'm going to cut it on an angle, on that diagonal. With a nice, this is a very sharp knife. Cutting it with a diagonal cut down there helps it to take in water quicker. Alright, I'm just going to set them in my cup here. So that's the primary part of all this. Is just diagonal cut on the bottom. Then I'm going to go about 1 inch below the next node. Make a little mark there. Then I'm going to cut it right in half. Got my bottom piece I'll put in there. Now I'm going to go back to this piece and I'm going to make a diagonal cut where I cut it off. And I can do that on the cutting board too. Just set it down on diagonal, tap the knife through it, and there I go. I can do just the whole large stick. That basically means that when this starts to root, it's going to start initially with more green on it, which is okay. That means it's going to grow stronger faster. It's going to be stronger in the beginning, and that's all right. If I want to take my time just a little more, I will cut each one of these so there's only one node per piece that I'm rooting. Those nodes will split the roots and it'll start to grow new little buds up along the stem, but it won't start out with many leaves. Even some of these bigger pieces like this one, I got one node on the bottom. This next node and this one, they'll all start sprouting leaves much quicker than if there wasn't another node up here on the top. So the bigger sticks, Even sometimes people will take a 3 or 4 inch piece, or 3 or 4 foot piece, kind of like this one. This whole piece here is more like 5.5 feet. I can take this and I can root this, and now suddenly once this roots, it's going to have much more green coming out of it all at once, much more foliage at once early on, which is going to cause more photosynthesis and really spur on the root growth to really take off faster. So it's not all bad to do bigger pieces. If you're really trying to start up a lot of plants, then you can go ahead and use smaller pieces. I know of some of the nurseries that actually they take all their, it's a space saver. They're doing thousands of these at once. They'll take their single node cutting, just like these ones, but the whole thing gets trimmed down to only about 2 inches above the first node. That's just so they're saving a ton of space because they're rooting hundreds of trays stacked just a few inches on top of each other on shelves. I don't have to do that way. So once again, I've got the piece that I cut off. There's a node. Make a cleaner cut on that one. There's a node just about a 1/2 inch up from the bottom of this piece. Okay, here's another node up here. I'm going to cut about 1 inch below that node straight across. Just put it on the cutting board and tap my knife through it. This is ready to go, diagonal cut side down. This one, I'm going to make a diagonal cut where that straight cut is, because a diagonal cut takes up water better. There you go, right in. So all these cuttings are ready to go and they're ready to start rooting. For the rooting solution, that's the easiest part. Honestly, just plain old non-chlorinated water works. I have well water, so I'm just going to use water from my tap. Now I want at minimum a couple of inches of water in my rooting container here, because I need to absolutely make sure that those nodes are always underwater. You can do this in just a moist or a wet waterlogged soil, or even in like a peat moss if you keep it very wet, but I don't see any great reason for that other than if you're doing, I can take each of these and I can put them as they are before they root just into little bitty pots full of a peat moss and a soil, and once they root in there, the roots will start to grow and take off fairly well in the peat moss and soil, and you'll end up with a nice little plug that you can plant. You can do it that way, or you can just root like this in a cup of water. They start to actually grow roots right in the water. Then I can take them and put them in little pots or plant them right in the ground as long as it's warm enough outside. Now I'm going to also do some of these with larger sticks because I want to see how they compete with the smaller ones. So I got to split this one apart. There's a node. Put a little node. Okay, I'm going to do this whole stick in one. Just like that, and that goes in. This one got kind of chewed up. This one doesn't have a node below here, so this is the first node on it. Go about 1 inch below. And this is a piece of dead wood right there, so I'm just going to trim that right off. Alright, cut that node on an angle. You want to make sure you get a nice clean cut when you're doing this. Now I've seen, even with some of these stronger trimmings like this one here, where you can make that nice sharp point on the bottom and just stick them right into the ground about a foot down into soft garden soil, keep them well watered, and they will actually take root right like that. I've done that with mulberry. I haven't done that with elder, but it's worked well for me with mulberry. Let's see here. This one's got a node right there, but this one's got 2 nodes close together. I'm gonna let this one have 2 nodes underwater. Alrighty. Yep. What's the next node isn't until, wow, until I get way up here. Okay, so I'm cutting this one so that it's got two nodes up here higher. It's got a node that's going to be out of the water. Those are going to sprout leaves much quicker that way. And here's an extra piece with no nodes. Maybe I'll make a whistle. Yep. So each of these has one node out of the water. I'm going to try that just to see how quickly they compete with ones that don't have a node on the top. They won't root right away. They won't root within a few days, or generally within about 2 weeks. Usually it takes several weeks, maybe 3 weeks or so, for them to really start rooting much. Sometimes they start earlier, around a week and a half. But you usually will start to see roots after a few weeks, about a month or just under. You'll generally start to see some root growth, little white root growth growing right out from those little nodes, those little buds that are underwater. And once they start to root, maybe just one or two of them will start at once. Leave them alone. Don't bother them. Those roots are very, very, very delicate right in the beginning. And if they snap off, they may not grow back. So be very delicate with them, gentle with them. When you see the roots starting, just leave them be. The rooting hormone, basically, that's released, it's a stress-induced thing that's released in the twigs. If you see one rooting and you take it out immediately, there's going to be a little less of that stress hormone, that rooting hormone in the water. So just leave them all. In here, this, by the way, this is way too many in one small container, because once they do start to root, the roots will start to intertwine a lot, and then when I try to pull them out, the roots will start snapping off. So something like this really isn't too many in one container. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I figured maybe 12. I was close. This is 11. That's about the most I'd want to really put into one container. You can start with them a little more crowded at first, but in that case, after a week or so, you really want to, before they start rooting, you need to split them up, because once the roots start growing, they'll start entangling and entwining, and you can't separate them anymore. So I wouldn't, in a jar this size, like in a mason jar, wide mouth jar, I wouldn't put more than 10 or 12 cuttings in here, because the roots are going to get all tangled up and bust up when you try to separate them. They'll start rooting somewhere around the 2 to 4 week mark. Just leave them alone. If you do notice the water start getting way too filthy after a couple weeks, it starts to get cloudy and slimy, it starts to look like things are rotting. Okay, just be gentle with them, dump all the water out, rinse the jar out thoroughly, and put your cuttings back in the jar of water. You don't want there to get any decomposition of matter in there. And you'll get a little bit, but you really want to limit that, because that can start to get widespread and hurt your cuttings. You don't need to use any type of a rooting compound, rooting hormone powder, anything like that with these. It really doesn't seem to make much difference. Elder root very easily on their own. They're easy to root, and they excrete a fairly high amount of their own rooting compound. So these things, along with things like raspberries and blackberries, they root super easy, no rooting hormone compounds needed in the water, just clean, non-chlorinated water. You can use any kind of spring water or well water, and that's great. Thanks for watching Northern Homesteading, and this is my whole spiel on rooting elder from cuttings. That's everything I've learned. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you liked it, I'd appreciate it if you could click that like button and let me know so I can make a note of what you guys expect here in the videos. Well, thanks. Bye now.